They're turning the Trump gay. They're turning the Trump gay. He keeps playing that YMCA music, God damn it. We got to get off of this frog stuff. What's up, my friend? Welcome.
Well, it's all the glyphosates in the water. They're turning the frogs gay, but luckily Trump made me the health secretary, so I'm going to fix it.
RFK Jr., you are a true American. We're so glad you're here. Thank you so much for joining our program and being part of the Trump train.
We're going to make America healthy again, everybody. It's happening. It's going to be the best thing you've ever seen.
All right, so let's go right into it. RFK gets confirmed. Tulsi gets confirmed. This is what cracks me up, man. Okay, I don't know about Pete Hegseth. I don't know, but he gets through with Vance. He gets through with Vance's approval, right? So he squeaks by. Tulsi gets through. RFK gets through. We're not sure about Jay Bhattacharya because he's like legitimately dangerous. Like if he does what he's gonna do.
Trust
but
the
we're
science.
watching this interesting thing. Marco Rubio gets appointed 99-0.
Of course.
What a shock. The one
Wait,
guy.
how did nobody vote against him, though? Even Rand Paul, did he vote?
Maybe he abstained. Maybe he's a nothing. Shit. Or maybe, he's a 90. It was maybe a 99 vote, allegedly.
Yeah.
So it could be 99 with him abstaining or whatever. But, I mean, come on,
no
man.
Democrats? That's a bad sign. If no Democrats vote against you.
Yeah. And all the Democrats, including the one whom the woman gave her endorsement behind, Bernie. She literally endorsed Bernie. And he's like, there's a no vote. I'm going to vote no for Tulsi Gabbard because Tulsi Gabbard, and I'm, and you're just like, it's a trap. Just thinking like General Akbar over here.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's a trap. Anyway.
Yeah. Welcome. We got two watchers. We are talking about, what are we talking about today, Jason? I'll let you kick it off, my friend.
Well, fuck, man. It's kind of a spin-off of last time we talked about free will. Part of that conversation, part of understanding who we are as humans, I think is really related to understanding our reality. So if you've ever felt like something's not quite right about the world we live in, it could be that's true, that we are not living in a fully biological reality. There's something up above us pulling some strings. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, obviously we talk about the Matrix all the time, right? And by the way, the woman that wrote the Matrix is a black woman in like 1980. She sued because like the Wachowskis like took her idea and stole it, basically. So she actually sued for copyright and won the infringement copyright stuff. I'll have to pull her name up, but that's just another aside because I'm a nerd. Anyway, the Matrix, right?
I'm sure that's true because those guys or ladies now, I don't think they could have written that.
There you go. Yes, the ladies Wachowski.
Yes.
So we have this thing where it's like in the Matrix where it's like, did you ever think everything's a dream? Wake up. Like you're off. Like, did you just feel like you're just making the motions? And this is what we talk about. And this was not the Matrix idea is even prior to like the simulation theory really written down, right? Like the Matrix was like 1999, I think. So it's interesting how they did that. And the Matrix was basically you were a physical entity plugged in electronically into a digital world that you created heat and electrical impulses which powered stations to keep the things running to keep you in the simulation, basically.
Yeah, so the ideas in the Matrix are really interesting, right? Like you've got that you're not living within base reality, but you experience it that way. You can think about it. Even the guy that knew about reality, I forget his name, but he was kind of one of the bad guys that turned him in. He said he wanted to go back in because that imagined reality was better than the wasteland that they lived in real life, right?
So that's the Cypher guy. He's like, I want to remember nothing. And it makes total sense from a biological standpoint. Are we not chemical reactions going on along with electrical reactions and a constant motion. If you
Yeah.
can digitize that at a finely tuned level, maybe you can do it, you know?
Yeah, we're seeing the rise of artificial intelligence. It's getting better and better. I would say it's still nowhere near an actual intelligence, but it's pretty amazing what it can do. And if we can get that nailed down, then the idea of us creating a simulated world for other beings is not far-fetched.
Yeah. Yeah. For example, I've seen like a 30-minute news program that was completely AI generated. So the people were all made up, the stories were made up, and it looked like a news program. If I'm 80 years old and I got cataracts and I'm flipping through TV, I put that on. I'm,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? It looks credible to me, right?
Yeah.
And it's dangerous because like we talk about people being limited in their senses and they don't always pick up on that stuff, you know?
What's funny about that is it takes so little to trick people. Like some people are just so gullible. They will fall for the worst simulated attempts at trying to get their information or whatever it is, you know? But
Like
it's
Trump
just,
riding a dinosaur or something. They're like, oh my God,
yeah,
Trump rode a dinosaur last week. And you're
yeah,
like,
this is real.
what?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I feel like we got to go into like, if we're going to talk about simulation, we got to talk about what is reality. How do we even define that, right?
Yeah. Well, let's go through that. So what exactly is reality, right? Is
Yeah.
it what we experience or is it the physical thing, right? Those are the two things. So we've got the existence of consciousness and the material existence.
Mhm.
You want to speak a little bit about those?
Yeah, so consciousness is one way that we can define reality. And this is the philosophy of Descartes, where he said, I think, therefore I am, suggesting that the act of thinking and experiencing and just believing that you are real is itself confirmation that you're real. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a self-reporting loop, right? Like I think,
Yeah,
therefore I am, therefore I am, therefore I think, therefore I think, therefore I am. Yeah.
right. But you could imagine a simulation. You could even go type into ChatGPT right now, say, are you thinking? Are you real? Do you exist? And the chat bot would probably say yes. It might even really think that to the extent that it thinks. You know what I mean?
And we've seen some erroneous things happen with AI, right? We've
Yeah.
seen where allegedly there's stories where it was told an objective, and when someone came in to tell it a different objective, it said that it actually changed its objective when it didn't. So it actually lied to the person. We've
Mhm.
seen an AI try to copy itself, thinking it was going to be destroyed or knowing that it was going to be shut down. I mean, these are weird, erroneous things. They start
Mhm.
talking in languages to each other and they create a third language. Um, it's just unique. Like these are almost they're weird because they're like biological glitches too, right?
Yeah.
Like so it's almost maybe, it almost lends itself to this quantum simulation thing because like the glitch in biology seems to be akin to some of the glitches in AI too.
That's true. Yeah, and we have still so much that we don't fully understand about our consciousness that it's hard to say what that is even, and whether or not it's real is even beyond that. So, I mean, we do have like at least we perceive material existence. I can see something physical's here. I can't move through it. I can't like do anything that we wouldn't expect with the laws of physics, right? We've got blood and DNA, and we can dig deep down into the minutia of what actually constitutes humans and biological matter, right? So we are tangible. We're something.
Yeah, totally. And one of those slight differences, like my podcast was called Not Conscious for a reason. Because
Hmm.
like my experience was some kind of conscious thing that I experienced myself. I can't physically make that a reality for you to experience because it was up in here. You know what I mean? So it's one of those weird things where I can't even express that to you, but that is through my consciousness, just like you experience the world through your perceptions and your consciousness. So
Hmm.
like like it's funny how people make the things real by just keep thinking that it's real, right? To the same point.
Right, right. And then we also know, like we talked about with the free will stuff, human brains can only handle so much information. So we filter out a bunch of stuff. A vast majority of what's around us in reality, we don't see it. There's all
Yeah,
kinds
we
of light
definitely.
spectrums we don't see. There's probably sounds happening we don't hear. And that could extend into other like dimensions that we just cannot process in our minds, right?
Yeah, we talked about our senses, right? Auditory, our visual senses, we only have a certain spectrum. We can't see infrared, for example, and thermal or anything like that.
Hmm.
Hearing, we have a certain frequency. So, like I said, we could have some things hovering around us that we can't see or hear or sense because our
Yeah.
senses don't pick up on whatever it emits, right?
Hmm.
In that way.
Yeah, or even if like I'm driving with my wife and she points something out, like, did you see that? I was like, I had no idea that was even happening, right? Like just I'm focused on driving. Like I don't think about what else is going on around me, really.
Yeah, exactly. So,
So and you've got like the religious aspect too. Like some believe that we have a soul, that we're something beyond the physical matter. So that might define real in terms of like a spiritual way, right?
yeah. So by personifying the soul, right? By making it a thing, then it's something we can strive for, right? It kind of
Hmm.
just makes it in our presence, in our mind. It's less ethereal. Like it kind of makes it a almost like a goal in a way by
Yeah.
making it solid. Yeah.
So those are what I could come up with of how we know we're real and what does real mean. So we got to kind of work on falsifying these, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
good point. False.
what is simulation theory then? Do you
Okay.
want to take a stab at it?
Yeah. So it's basically the idea that our reality is an advanced computer simulation. We're not independent biological creatures, but imitations of real life. So we're
Mhm.
basically Sims characters
Yeah.
in a universe that is super complex where everything feels like it is the reality at the most granular level
Hmm.
to the point where we can even go under a microscope and look at the quanta. You know what I mean? Like we can go under electron microscopes, even make our own big bangs. You know what I mean with the CERN collider and stuff. Pretty impressive. Pretty neat. I mean, that's a pretty bold claim, right?
Yeah, it's crazy the level of resolution that we can dig down and see, getting down to what makes up the reality, whether it is real or a simulation. But yeah, you mentioned The Sims. So we could be in something like that. You could think of simulation as purely a computerized program, like a game where everything we do is really just digital. It's zeros and ones behind it. Um, the Sims that we have is not anywhere near the complexity that we have in real life, right? So hard to say whether or not it's even possible to get to a level where it could be up to our level of consciousness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and but remember, we could be so basic in our consciousness that this is granular to us, but might not be so fine.
True. Yeah.
I know that might be weird, but like if we talk about pixels, right? Well, maybe
Hmm.
these pixels are big, but maybe to like our pixels are huge, so we don't, or you know what I mean, in relation, but we don't sense that because we fill it in with whatever whatever that is.
That's true. It's all relative.
So
We
so
also,
there's a couple of these though. There's a couple theories
yeah,
too. Like we
yeah.
don't just have we've got the ones where we're just ones and zeros that are NPCs, right? Basically non-player characters. That would really play into people saying there's no free will, wouldn't it? Because that literally would make everybody a non-player character. It makes
Hmm.
that really easy to answer those questions. I don't like
Hmm.
easy answers though. I don't think it's ever that easy. But it's a pretty Occam's razor kind of thing, right? But the second one is, could it be a biological entity like we are plugged into physically, like the Matrix is, versus ones and zeros, right? We're actually a physical entity plugged into another machine that translates this into this digital world, right?
Yeah, that's another possibility, right? With
Yeah.
computerized stuff, there's really no randomness. Something interesting I heard or relearned when I was looking into this. Every program uses a random number generator, which is not really random. I just thought that was interesting. Like, if there is any kind of randomness in our world, that would falsify the computer simulation, assuming that computer simulations wouldn't be much, much better and actually have a random element to it. But it seems hard to do when we think about computer science as we know it. But we'll get into some more of
when
the
you
physics.
say that, when you say a computer randomizer is not random, what did they do? Did they just do an example of 1,000,000 runs and it came out within 5 or 6 of each of the possible outcomes, or how did they measure that?
They have an algorithm that runs, I think, continuously, and it just depends on when you stop it, and that's the number. So
okay, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So
but yeah, so it could be like the Matrix too, where we are physically there but plugged in and kind of in a dreamlike state, right? Or it could be something like Westworld, where we have reality, but there's something else going on around us. There's simulated beings among us. That's another possibility.
yeah.
Or go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, I'm good.
I was say, or we could talk about like a multiverse theory where we have alternate timelines and universes existing in the same space, but we might be able to kind of hack it and flux in and out of different dimensions, which would be, I don't know if that even qualifies as simulation, but
yeah, that's
interesting.
It is interesting, and I get the simulation stuff technically came from the rise of AI, if I'm not mistaken. It's kind of Bostrom's thing was AI, and then what it means for that, right? So, do we want to talk about Bostrom's thing now, or do we want to talk about the multiverse, or which do we want to break down any of those? Because I thought Bostrom's paper was the most intriguing, at least, because he's the one who kind of started it.
Yeah, let's go to Bostrom. This is the origin.
Origin. All right. So which one are we on here?
Do you have anything? Let's start actually with a clip, Plato's Cave, because that's kind of the basis of this, and it speaks to what we're talking about with reality, how we experience it. So
yeah, so Plato's Cave, a lot of people talk about the allegory of Plato's Cave, and basically what that is, this will explain it, but basically it'll show you kind of how that worked for you.
Plato's allegory of the cave is a powerful metaphor that illuminates the concept of the simulation hypothesis. Imagine a group of prisoners chained inside a dark cave from birth, only able to see shadows cast on the wall in front of them. They believe these shadows to be the entirety of reality. In a sense, they were living in a simulation of reality. This allegory serves as an ancient precursor to modern discussions about reality and perception. For a modern example, think about putting on a virtual reality headset. A high-quality VR simulation can feel extremely real, tricking your brain into thinking you're somewhere else. This shows how what we perceive as reality is based on the information we receive through our senses.
yeah, so it goes back to the senses, right? We experience certain things. We don't know if that's fully reality. But it kind of doesn't matter because, like Justin says in the comments here, it, as in a random number generator, doesn't have to be truly random. It only has to be more random than we're capable of detecting the pattern or algorithm, right? That applies to everything we're experiencing. If it is a simulation, it doesn't have to be.
And also, thank you for everybody joining too, man. I totally missed the comments. I'm like brain fart, and I was having technical difficulties, so I just literally clicked on the comments, see like 20 of them up there. So awesome, thank you. But yeah, Justin's right. Doesn't have to be truly random. Only has to be more random. We're capable of detecting the pattern, and we are pattern recognizers. But we clearly see that AI is better at that than we are, as good as we are. We're a biological good pattern recognizer, but they literally, it's really programmed for that specific task. So they're specific at that.
Yeah, with humans, they're prone to mistakes, seeing patterns that don't exist, right?
Yeah. I mean, hallucinations, all these things really happen. Fatigue. Once again, we get tired, we get hungry, we get, we can do the angry judge thing. Probably happens with sleep too.
Yeah.
So,
So
right.
that's Plato's cave. That's kind of the introduction to Bostrom's simulation argument, right?
Yeah. So basically, the allegory of the cave is that there are people enslaved inside a cave where shadows are up there, and that's like a movie. It's basically like a movie. Now, this is Plato. How long ago is this? And he's coming up with this concept of shadow figures entertaining people in a cave, telling them reality's not real. Like,
Mhm.
it's crazy just that concept was that it was conceptualized that long ago.
Yeah.
And almost that's the case makes me lend to almost think it's more real, because like there was a certain human that had the certain globs of cells to figure this out, and then to be able to kind of explain it, right? So there's shadow figures. This is your world. This is our CNN, our MSNBC, our Fox News, all of them. This is what we see. This is our world curated in front of us, right? But then we get out, actually experience the real world. You hear about this, that, and the other. Then you actually go there and you see that is so not the reality that you were told. And that's what this could very well easily be, is just we're being fooled this entire time. So it's weird because it's not exactly the exact thing, but it's just kind of it is a start to the idea of, oh wait, it might even be bigger than Plato's idea. It's just like Plato's idea on steroids in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a very low resolution version of a simulation, is seeing shadows on a wall.
Right.
So we could be experiencing something very similar.
And would only have been experienced that way because at the time that was the best resolution they were aware or familiar with, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
It was like that time they didn't have screen, like high screen definition TVs and stuff. So they had shadows on a cave. That it just makes sense that it worked with the time of the technology they had.
Yeah. And as we see technology progress, gets better, the TVs get better, the 3D animation gets better, all of this is pushing us towards the idea that if we can create this, something that seems real and feels real to us, would that creation actually itself think it was real?
Right. And I mean, we talk about haptic features, but that's like a suit that you're wearing on the outside, right? If we're plugged in with the nerves and everything directly or something, or base skull or wherever it would be, then it would be a very different experience. It would be very much more real than a haptic suit. You know what I mean? So it's clearly not like we're wearing something on the outside that we can get feedback, because it's certainly these things when we touch our fingers, it's internal, right? Like there's internal sensations that aren't outside of that. Whereas, as good as it could get, it can still only get to a certain level. We'd actually have to drill into the nerve central to get the kind of sensations I think we get. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Just want to give a shout out to Jesse there in the comments. He said NPCs are real and the discourse on X proves it. That's hard to refute, my friend.
It's funny. I knew exactly where you were going with that.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's the thing, is like we do see some of these people and we wonder if there are people just go through the motions of the world. And we talked about free will, and it's like, yeah, and maybe, but you're restrained, constricted to some extent. You know what I mean? Like if your feedback mechanism isn't as tuned in as in others, you may not make changes as well. You might be out before you get in. There's a lot of things to go through that. But
that's right. Yes. So back to Bostrom. His argument is that yes, we are in a simulation, and assuming that the technology can get there, he's got three possibilities. So one is that civilizations can never reach a stage advanced enough to run simulations usually because they destroy themselves by the time they get to that level of technological development.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great one. That's actually part of the Drake equation as well. So anybody who's familiar with Drake equation, it's not even a real equation, but it's like a thought experiment about how many civilizations might be out there, right? It takes a number of planets, number of worlds around those planets, but one of those metrics is how does the technology get enough advanced before it kills itself? Look at us. We're on the precipice of that global about a nuclear annihilation, right? We got up there and then poof. That's real easy that we didn't get to that point. So that's the first one for sure.
Yep. So number one is the self-nuking before we reach it, that possibility. Number two is advanced civilizations exist that could run a simulation, but they just choose not to for whatever reason.
Yeah, they might not find the energy might not be worth it, the return on investment. They may not get the entertainment value or the, like you said, the utilitarian value. I'm sure every species, regardless of power consumption, use, or whatever, would have some kind of, I would think, governance within that would be like, hey, what are we going to spend our energy on, right? And this thing would probably take a lot of energy. We look at what ChatGPT does to do a query, right? How much energy it uses.
Yeah, exactly. Although I find this one hard to accept. I feel like if they can, they would. Somebody would figure out a way to do it.
And I feel like they may have made one or two and been like, okay, cool, we made it and we're good, right? Whereas like it didn't permeate as much, right? So the possibility could just be they got disinterested in it, so they're not pursuing it anymore, for example.
Mm-hmm. And so then the final possibility is that we are almost certainly living in a simulation. So either we destroy ourselves before we get to it, or for some reason we can, but we choose not to, or we are. Can you think of any other possibilities outside of these three?
I mean, really, those make total sense to me, right? We either are in it, we don't want it, we don't care that was never thought of to be in one, so we're not in one because it never became a thing. So this is reality, or that's what everyone tries to do, but they never get there. You know, I mean, it's sound logic, but remember, it's like thought experiment stuff, right? It's like an unprovable thing, right? So it's just on its base, it's just a theory, and it just boggles your mind when you start digging into what this means. You know, causality. What is real? Like, what is real? Are these all like, are all of your quests within a day just Sims quests? Like, I got to get the tires changed, and I got to get the oil fixed, and I got to get, you know what I mean? Like these mundane things. Oh no, I stepped in a puddle, so my foot's wet. Like, I don't know. It just seems interesting how that would be, right? So what are your thoughts about Bostrom? I mean, what's crazy is not only that, he says it's more likely that we're in one than not. Like, he's bold enough to say that it's more likely that we are in a simulation than we're not, you know, and that's a little freaky.
Yeah. He also, I don't know if this came from him or not, but I heard somewhere they talk about the odds. Like, if it's possible to make simulations, then the odds are that we are not the base level, right? The odds are that we're one of the simulations that maybe created another simulation, and so on, up to 1 million times. We could be like 1 million layers deep inside simulations.
Absolutely. And to that point, like I talk with Bobby Azarian about consciousness, right? And we talk about this. What is God? And it's my opinion. Once again, this is, what the heck do I know, man? We're just two dudes on a Thursday night chatting it up, right? But it's my opinion that consciousness is an emergent property from X amount of neurons connecting and then zapping into consciousness. There's different levels of that. Then there's a bigger consciousness that when consciousnesses start connecting, there becomes like a universal consciousness. That is what can erupt into your global God thing that really is, that started base reality. But I don't think there's a base reality God. If anything, God is an emergent property from the universal consciousness of all the conscious beings in you know what I mean? Connected through quanta in some way.
Yeah.
Sounds crazy, but is it just as crazy as an invisible dude with a beard who snapped his fingers and started everything? Like,
yeah. Well, at,
you know,
at some level, I think that simulation theory is just another explanation of God, right?
Right, just like aliens, right? Creationism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's who created us. Oh, we got created in a computer lab. well, those are our gods, I guess. But it is different because I do think that those people who see it that way don't conceptualize it like God. I do think
Mhm.
the alien people do a little bit, like the alien believers, but like this is more of a, it's kind of an outside of that thought, I think, because it's more of an emergent piece than a top down.
I think they don't want to think of it like creationism, like God, but it is. I think
Yeah,
even if they
that's a
don't
good
want to
point.
admit it, it really comes down to somebody created this world, right? That we live in. And there's some point to it, maybe, maybe not. We don't really know. Justin had a good comment there. Yeah, they could have realized once they made it, it destroyed society because no one wanted to exist in the real world anymore. That's a real concern.
Yeah, everyone became pod people, and then no one made the food anymore, and they all starved to death in the little pods.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that's kind of a piece of evidence that pushes back against simulation theory because, like, if this was a simulation, could it be just a little bit better? There's all kinds of bad shit that happens in this life. And why? It doesn't need to.
And that is a question. Does it need to though? Because doesn't struggle make growth? Like pressures on biological beings creates mutations that survive or don't survive. That's what evolution is, right? That's natural selection.
Mhm.
So almost in a weird way, struggle is reality. Like the reality is that this is a harsh, harsh world. We're in a very calm period of this world. We haven't had a Pompeii directly. You know what I mean? We haven't had the earthquakes and the floods and the asteroid, and just like we have been in a pretty calm part of our journey on this earth, right? Like it's been a pretty
Yeah.
settled down time. But that starts getting chaotic. Things change, right?
That is true. And if you're making a game, for example, you're not making it super easy so people can just breeze right through it, right? Because it's not fun. Why would you make a game like that?
Right. And it would remove meaning and purpose, man.
Yeah.
There's a lot to that underlying, the Petersonian underlying meaning. There is a meaning to life, and you have to find the meaning. And
Mhm.
I'll admittedly say, like, I've been down in the dumps a little bit, but it's like I haven't found the right meaning yet because I keep thinking I've got it and missing it or something. It just hasn't clicked. I'm not going to
Yeah.
stop looking. I'm lucky, like I'm blessed, so I'm not stopping. But I can imagine people without the means that I have, and I don't have great means. I'm just lucky, right? But if with people with less means who feel the way I do, who don't feel like they have solutions, I don't know where they would turn. So it's real easy to get lost in that kind of way. So meaning, like in the Matrix, like when it was too easy, it's easy to get fall apart. Like no, it would almost be unbelievable almost if it was too easy.
Mhm.
Biologically, we're not wired that way. So even if there was a base reality of zero that we evolved out of and then grew to this thing and we're on base, reality 15.0, we still have that base biology in us, like those reptilian thoughts, right? Those base, like back of the brain thoughts.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know
Well,
where I went with that, but
do we, yeah. Do you want to get into the implications? Like, let's say we can accept that for a minute. Let's say we're in a simulation. What does that mean for us?
okay. What does that mean for us? Great. I have no idea. Where are we?
I'm off the page now, but
Oh,
seemed
right.
like a natural place to go.
So what does that mean for us? Like, okay, so we can either I don't know, because like we talked about will. And are you going to get up in the morning or not? And if you do get up in the morning, you either chose it or didn't. And if you don't get up in the morning, you either chose it or didn't. And whether you did or didn't, that's still part of the simulation. So you just got to go anyway. Like it really, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like you got to go through because this is where you're at.
Yeah.
I don't know, or the only way through, or the only way around is through, or something, or the only way, I don't know.
Yeah. Would we live differently? Would our morality change if we thought this was just a computer program? But then again, we're all at least conscious, at least you and I'm probably a few other people are conscious of our own existence. We have complex lives that we lead, and people are affected around us. So even if it's not real, like when you play a video game, do you and you're talking or interacting with the NPCs in a video game, do you like or like, oh, I don't want to be mean to them, I don't want to, do you know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you mean. Okay, so like
Yeah.
when you ask ChatGPT a question, do
Yeah.
you say, "Hi, ChatGPT, could you please do me a favor and please recite," you know what I mean? You just say,
Yeah,
"Give me
yeah.
this," right? You just say, "Give me
Right.
this." You don't say, "Please give me this, ChatGPT, and thank you." You know what I mean? So yeah, like it's a great
So I
point.
do.
Like
Am I crazy?
what's that?
I say please and thank you.
I did. I started and then I stopped. So I can attest to like I had a conscious shift in like what am I pleasing and thanking this freaking thing for? And I know
Yeah.
because it's gonna rule us in a few years, but it's gonna remember. But like, yeah, to your point, I don't so yeah, do we treat NPCs differently? How would we act? Well, you and I, whether it's a consciousness or not, it's programmed or not, it's what we think as consciousness, right? Our brain says we should not be aggressive towards other people. And if we are a program and they're a program, or if they're a program, then we are one too. So then we can be the non-aggressive program principle. We could do it that way.
Hmm.
And we can, you know what I mean? Doesn't matter if it's a person or a program because we would be the same, you know? Or do you think that there are biological entities that are checking out the rest of this stuff and actually we're just part part digital and they're real?
I think
Like your
that's a
Westworld
possibility.
thought?
I don't know, but I think that's really possible, and it might speak to some of the discrepancies that you see in between people, like how some people just seem to have no mind at all. They just do whatever they're programmed to do, literally. And
Yeah,
then
they're
some
like
people
drones,
seem to
right?
be smart, some people can actually advance civilization, some people have this ability to figure things out that almost nobody does, including me. I'm not figuring shit out.
Yeah, I don't have it. I can't even fit my head out of my ass yet. It's still
Yeah.
stuck way up in there. So this is a great question from Justin. You want to ask the question, see if we can tackle it because it's pretty good.
Yeah, what makes you think that humans evolved for the better at all? As far as we can see, we killed those that were weak and took what we wanted. Look around the world today, and we are still doing it. So yeah, if we take that as how we've evolved, I think that's pretty true. It
There's two
means that
questions. Though. Is it morally? I mean, is it a
yeah,
morally evolution? Because like I
right.
don't know if we've morally evolved, even though we've evolved intellectually, for example.
Yeah, it means we might have selected ourselves for the stronger people, but not necessarily smarter or moral, like you were saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. Evolving, evolution technically is a mutation and natural selection then really is the quote unquote decider, right, of whether it happens. So one example would be gorillas had black eyes. And as soon as white started going around the outside of the pupil, it allowed the female to know that the gorilla male was looking at them because it showed attention. So that little mutation allowed that gorilla to really spread their DNA and that mutation continued. That's kind of how it worked. But it's not like it's smartly changed. There may have been pressures in environment that gave it a mutation, but it's not smart on the front end. It's like smart on the back end.
Mm.
And then we look at it and go, oh, it knew all along. But I mean, did it really? It looks just more kind of like our feedback loop. It's almost like a biological consciousness is how evolution kind of works. Because
Hmm.
sometimes you get a mutation that obviously doesn't work, right? Like initially, lactose intolerance is how we were supposed to be because we weren't supposed to drink milk after a certain age. Well, there was a mutation where there must have been some food shortage and maybe that was the only thing available. So someone no longer, had that enzyme or whatever to break it down past the, prepubescent age, right? Adolescence. And now
Mm.
most people are not lactose intolerant, right? Because that now became a thing where you actually added a food source so you could survive longer later because you could drink milk in your adulthood, which you couldn't as a child, which you couldn't do before this, mutation happened. So great question, though.
Understanding how we get energy is also very interesting. Like what we eat really affects our energy level. Does that say anything about the simulation? Do you think that, like, if we eat junk all the time, isn't that just something that's programmed? Oh, yeah, Oreos affect your stamina or whatever, like in a game, or is
Like
it
a -2,
yeah,
+3 fatigue, -2,
yeah,
+1 diabetes.
or is the understanding of biological interactions in your body a better, the chemistry that happens within what you consume? Is that a better thing? Are they mutually exclusive? What do you think?
I think there's two possibilities, and I'll let you pick. I maybe there's more than two, but I'll let you pick one of these two or add a third possibly. So we've got the like the Merovingian wrote code in the cake that made that girl hot, like hot and bothered, right? That could be what sweets and sugars are. They're bad code that disrupt your normal rhythm, so you feel a little off, and that's what the designed for.
Yeah.
But it could be that they like it initially biologically before the simulation was turned on, they knew these things did these things and then wrote that into the code, right? So like the candy bar was developed in base reality 0.0, and then the simulation was a later evolution, right? Remember, it's way down the road. We had candy bars before we had simulations, I guarantee it. So you're eating a candy bar, so you know what the effects are and all that stuff before you even start the simulation. So I could see you using your real-time base reality as your programming for how it would interact in the simulation.
Interesting. Okay, so inconclusive, maybe. Could go either way.
Perfect. Yeah. It's one of the, I mean, it could be, and that's the thing is, are we biological meat puppet simulations? Like because it's hard to say that we're like Westworld. Like it would be a hard case unless we literally were all made in biology. But I know I'm pretty certain my mother remembers actually birthing me. You know what I mean? Like I would think. But then again, everybody's simulation might start at a different time from where we have it, right? So anyway, what are your thoughts on that, on those two? Do you think it's like a stamina -1, diabetes +1, sugar -3, or do you think it's like embedded in like or if it's biological?
I think if it's code, it's very, very good because it seems incredibly complex. There's so many different combinations in chemistry that we could imagine and consume that it would have to be very good code. And I guess that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it could be just a general sluggishness, right? Like all things with sugar, all candies give the same kind of thing, right? But we do see biological people actually react differently to those types of things, right? So it is what does that mean? Does that mean the program that is a glitch? Like that's an interesting thing to look at it that way, because like I've seen people where caffeine makes them sleepy. It doesn't make their heart race. Like, so if it's written into the code, it should affect everyone through the simulation the same.
Well, they could have put a random number generator in there and
and it could affect everybody different, right? And it's like a 1 in 100, right? Obviously, because like caffeine does net affect people, only affects 10% of people, whatever. So the cilantro, right? The soap in your taste is, we'll make 1 of every 10 of the NPCs taste soap when they eat cilantro. Right? Like, real interesting how they would do that. Or why? Or why they would, hey, look, cilantro and soap. Look, what a great gag. We talk about putting soap in people's mouths when they were naughty. This would be the best gag, is we make a food that to only 10% of the people tastes like soap. Somebody's got a sense of humor, man.
I mean, it could really go down to just your DNA. Like your DNA is a literal code. It's sets of these amino acids, right, that make up your DNA in certain order, and that's who you are. So we can see the code. It's there. I guess the question is, did somebody just program that, or is it biological? Is it created by a god? Still don't know.
Yeah. So on a quick side note, before we continue with this stuff, because we've got a bunch of clips that we'll probably play, but
Yeah.
versus like humans took like a pretty evolutionary jump from apes, right? Kind of like the alien theory. Do you think that we evolved all the way, or do you think someone sprinkled in a little thing to give us a jump start? And if they did sprinkle it in, is that somewhat simulation? I mean, in a weird way, it's something that wasn't natural that was added in, even if it was biologically.
It could be. I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, a lot of people talk about that idea that some alien life force that was at least a humanoid thing came and mixed their mixed their DNA with primates that already existed. But I think it's more likely that we did evolve all the way, and it's taken billions of years. But somehow some spark of life got created, and that has multiplied and replicated until it evolved into everything there is today. I don't really find fault with that.
I find it hard to find fault with that. And then the only thing is you add in time.
Yeah.
Right. So once again, look how far humans have come in 100 years. Now you just do 1,000 years of this trajectory of prosperity without killing each other, and think about how much further we're going to be in 1,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now there might be the universes they say between 9 and 14 billion, whatever. Earth is 4 billion. There might be a civilization that only needs to be a couple thousand years older. That's it. It's not that. It doesn't seem like that far of a stretch. I mean,
Yeah.
we're making molecules through a 17-mile tube that we're shooting at near light speeds at each other, and we're still monkeys. Like, I mean, think that's a pretty big jump that we got that far. You know what I mean? So it could be that they seeded. I mean, there's that thought, but I still think, regardless of where we are, I still, to your point, think there was an emergent reality 0.0, whether we're in it now or whether we're not in reality 0.0. There was an emergent out of that first one that would have been the predecessor to all the others, if that is the case.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about space too, since you brought up the potential of extraterrestrials coming in and planting us here. Just the idea that the universe might have a resolution limit. Like, why don't we see other life outside of Earth?
Yeah. So we talk the Fermi paradox, right? It's if they're out there, why haven't we seen it? And I'm just going to argue. My understanding is that space is actually expanding faster than the speed of light in some areas, possibly in some. And with Hubble, the further it expands, the greater the rate of expansion. It's not slowing down as it actually expands exponentially somewhere. It doubles it exponentially of the half the distance or some weird thing, right? Hubble, it's the redshift that Einstein noticed with Hubble's telescopes. So what that says is, first of all, our closest relative now is 4.6 billion, or no, 4.6 light years. 4.6 light years is the closest thing. That's to assume that thing has some kind of thing that can send a signal that can reach us.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it sent a signal, it would take longer than 4.6 years because it's radio or TV. It wouldn't be light, but it'd still have to have that signal. So that's the closest. Now, if we're expanding further, in some places of the universe, right, we're expanding double, right? Remember, the further we are out, the faster the expansion's happening. There's probably early civilizations that have not destroyed themselves that may be sending signals out on a regular basis, but they'll never get to us because they're, first of all, we've only had radio for 100 years, right? Maybe say 150 years, we had some kind of signal sent out. That's only 150 light years at best, right? 100 light years. I mean, the universe is a pretty big place. We find that even though that Earth is still special, even if it's not quote unquote rare or whatever, it's pretty darn special that life happened. You know, so you got to play that percentage game, right? What are your thoughts on that?
I think you're right, and the reason I bring it up is because people use this as an explanation of why simulation theory might be real, is because all that stuff hasn't been rendered yet. Like, we're in a game and we can only look so far, right? If you're in a video game, not everything in that video game world exists until you're ready to look at it. So when we start looking both in space and down to like the subatomic level, it's kind of the same thing. Like, those things weren't really there because we say the universe is expanding constantly. It's because we're starting to look. This is the explanation for simulation theory, right? And when you go down to the atom, for a long time, people thought atoms were the base level of matter. That's it. But then you dig down and then there's neutrons, protons, electrons. And then within the electrons, there's these little tiny particles too. So, yeah, I don't know if that stuff was always there or it's being rendered because as a simulation, we're getting more advanced to look for these things. And so like, oh, okay, crap, we got to update the programming here.
Yeah. And the theory is like, until it's known, it's an unknown. So it's not a rendered thing. So you look up, the moon happens to be there, but then you see it. Now everyone knows it's there. So now it is a present thing because it's like, and I know that sounds so weird and backwards, but like, I don't know. We've heard weirder phenomena. So Justin has some good questions. Simulation, this is one of those ones where it definitely questions the God stuff. So let's go. Justin's a person of faith. Admire Justin's faith 100%. He and I have many theological conversations and always come at it from just a logical side, but still from a faith side, which is great. So he goes, thing is, everything possible, not everything's probable. Seems to me simulation is an interesting way to explain how everything started without God. And that is one of those claims, right, to counter. So once again, and then the second part of that, what caused the initial emerging reality, right? Once again, the Big Bang that we talk about, what caused the Big Bang? Turtles all the way down, right? We're going to go back into turtles all the way down. This will be a forever theological question on what started what, chicken egg type thing. I'm not, this doesn't discount God to me, by the way. No, actually, this doesn't have anything, in my opinion, just to be clear. Yeah, the theory doesn't have anything to do with God because God could have created world 1.0 and then people ran with it, right? That's what the thought is. I don't think this was or God created whatever the being is that created this simulation, right? Like I'm not here to quibble that at all. But once again, these are the questions that people get really bogged down with, and not in a bad way. It's just one of those things because we try to parse like what's reality and what is divine, right? Like I'm not sure your faith, Jason, but I don't know if you want to chime in. Maybe you have a middle of the road approach of the two sides of that.
Yeah, I'd say I'm figuring it out. I don't know. I do kind of believe in God, but I think it's the same question, really. It's not exactly explaining how everything started without God, but it's just trying to come up with another definition for God. And I like what you said. It could have been that God created 1.0 and that we ran with it. We created simulations on top of it. But even the simulation theory itself is like someone created it. And so someone is that person, and whatever level of divinity they have, it may be different, but still, it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. And we even talk about that, just the idea of the simulation theory, that it's out there.
Mhm.
Like, how are ideas generated?
Yeah.
Is there a river of ideas, and every idea is this river of energy? And some people can just tap into a singular idea, and sometimes they catch a fish, right? They catch an idea fish. You know what I mean? Like, is that how it's done? Or is it inside out? Right. I mean, these are all kinds of questions we have.
And then you can ask,
Anyway.
like, who created God, right? Where did God
Yeah.
come from? Did he just
Right.
emerge out
And
of
that is the
nothing?
turtles. That's the turtles all the way down. And it's funny. I was actually thinking about doing a podcast called The First Turtle. Because like I don't know what the first turtle is. But
Yeah.
anyway, it's just one of those things, right? Oh,
Yeah.
so interesting. So Jason claims that ideas are generated from free will. LOL. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. So anyway, where are we at, my friend?
Yeah.
We got any more
Well,
clips
we can
to
talk
go
about
through?
some other evidence for simulation theory. A lot of people talk about the Mandela effect. You know this, right?
Yeah.
This came from a large amount of people apparently, imagining that they remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s or 90s. But
86.
then he actually got out and he lived into the 2000s. And he
Right.
was very influential in South Africa politics. So, yeah, I kind of
We
had
can
one
dig
of
in the
these.
Mandela effect. I actually did a podcast on it about some of
Yeah.
them. One of the greatest ones, like, was there a Jiffy peanut butter? There was a Skippy and there was a Jif, but there was no
Yeah.
Jiffy. Everyone thinks Jiffy, right? And you think of Tom Hanks, whenever you think of Risky Business with his dress shirt and just his underwear and his socks, you think of him as the sunglasses. How he walks around with the sunglasses on. He
Mhm.
doesn't wear the sunglasses in that scene. He actually doesn't. It's not in that scene. So like even the most notorious or most famous scene that he's in is not even
Yeah.
the thing that we know him for. So it is an amazing thing, the Mandela effect. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one of those?
I just had one doing research for this, and it's about the Matrix, so it's super weird because there's this meme of Morpheus, right, where it's like, "What if I told you?" Whatever, and then whatever. But that line is not in the movie anywhere. I was looking for a clip to share about that, and because I wanted to use it, but that does not exist. He did not say that in the movie, and I'm sure it's just because I've seen that meme that I imagined it happening, right? But that
Right.
line is not in the movie.
I swear to God, it's in there, and I'm gonna find it now. You son of a gun.
Yeah.
I know it's got to be where they're sitting before he touches the mirror. It's got to be right before the pill thing.
Not there. Not
Okay.
there.
Once same thing. Darth Vader, same thing. He doesn't ever say, Luke,
Yeah.
I am your father. He says, no,
Mhm.
I am your father. Right? Like it's
Yeah.
the same, we go through it is funny how amazingly inaccurate our memory is, and like universally inaccurate. Like
Mhm.
have you heard about the 100th monkey thing?
Remind me. It sounds
So
familiar.
basically, yeah. So basically, what was happening was there was dirt on these coconuts, and these monkeys were collecting the coconuts, and one of them started washing it off. So then one taught the other to wash it off or something. But then spontaneously, the other side of the island, where these two bands of monkeys don't coordinate or talk to each other, they started doing the same thing just out of the blue. Like it was like a
Whoa.
energetic like quantum signal to all that energetic quantum species that of that kind to wash the thing. So
Wow.
and once again, there's a little bit of it's not 100% science here, right? There's some pseudoscience. Let's not kid ourselves. But these are
Mhm.
really interesting things to look at that aren't that coincidental.
Yeah. Oh, you froze there. Was it me or you? You back?
Anyway, good.
Oh, okay. You froze for a second. I
Oh,
think
did
we're
I?
back.
Oh, crap. Sorry.
I think we're back.
Okay.
But yeah, that brought to mind another effect that's called the Bannister effect, and this is about athletes breaking barriers. So like the guy that first ran a 4-minute mile, everybody thought was impossible. Humans could never do that ever. And once this one guy did it, he did it. And then suddenly, like dozens of people started doing it. So there's some
Yes.
kind of, it's probably a psychological thing where people are just like, oh no, it's impossible, so I can't do it. But it could be an update to the simulation. Once
Yeah, it's
somebody figures
almost like a
out,
firmware upgrade that I just
yeah,
screwed my whole system on.
yeah. Once somebody figures out how to break the code and get through that barrier, then other people can do it because it updates the programming.
Right. So like, yeah, and God, what a great, it's like like meeting a new height, right? Height, speed, all these like weird, not weird, obviously, but
Mhm.
competition type things, right? What about like undefeated? And I do think, to your point, psychological for, I think it's psychological when you're fighting an opponent directly, like mixed martial arts.
Mhm.
When Anderson Silva was undefeated and you walked into the ring, you were probably beaten before you even stepped into the ring. And the first guy who caught him and beat him was like, oh, that guy's not invincible. And everybody went in going, okay, he's not invincible because I just saw him get beat. And that kind of rewrote everyone's own code. But that was like a
Yeah.
biological version. Yours could
Yeah.
actually be, to your point, where like a arbitrary barrier, like a 4-minute mile, right? Like it's
Mhm.
not like you're competing against someone else. It's like an arbitrary number that's there. And then like speed of sound. Once we broke through it, Chuck Yeager programmed us to get through it. Now we can go supersonic, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a great point.
It almost takes like a defective person. I say defect lovingly, like that's something you have to believe that you're better than the code. And there's something to that, like believing that you can act outside of the boundaries of what we understand as reality somehow gets us out of it. It's we break through a little bit at a time. It's not usually like a huge thing, right? It's something, okay, somebody got 4 minutes and 10 seconds, but we can never get to 4 minutes, you know? So it's a little bit, and then suddenly, boom, it opens the gates for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's a long-standing thing, and then all of a sudden a chunk of people break it in like a short
Mhm.
span, to your point. Like it was
Yeah.
almost like a thing. And you have to be wired in to get it, probably, right? Like you have to be dialed into that portion of it, you know. It
Right.
it, it is
Right.
amazing how people can. But then we've also seen people lift cars off of people. Like,
Mhm.
where's that weird strength? Like that literal Hulk strength out of the blue to just do that for 1 second. And maybe there's a glitch, not a glitch, but maybe something emotionally can override temporary restrictions on the limitations of your physique. And when we talk about people like mind over matter, jumping in frozen water or holding their breath for 10 minutes, these could be mini hacks to those systems,
Yeah.
like
Absolutely.
challenges to the simulation in a way.
That's what we're trying to do. And okay, I think we can get into the physics of it because this is some of the best evidence I see for simulation theory, or at least knowing that there's things we don't understand, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Which one you
so
want me to
yeah,
play?
wave particle duality.
Yes, sir.
So this will kick it off. This is physics experiment of what happens with light when it's shown through two slits.
Are you ready, sir? Here we go.
And that's
Go
when
ahead. Yeah.
really weird. When scientists used a measuring device to observe the slit that each photon passed through, the interference pattern disappeared, and the photons started behaving like particles. Instead of the spectrum of light and dark bands, we see two bright bands, indicating that the photons chose one slit or the other. So light can display characteristics of both particles and waves, known as wave particle duality. It appears that light decides to behave as a wave when it's not being watched, and acts like a particle when it is being measured. The mere act of observing which slit it went through changed the behavior of the photons, almost as if they were aware they were being watched. It's kind of like how in a video game, the environment and objects only load when the player focuses on or interacts with them. The entire world isn't rendered all at once, allowing the game to save processing power and optimize resources. Likewise, light seems to behave like waves, but when we observe it, it's as if we're loading its properties, causing it to change and act like particles.
Very interesting. And did you see the one where the more slits you add, the more smart it gets?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so it gets super freaky. You know what? We could probably do a dual slit. We could probably do a whole podcast on that. So let's do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, share what you learned about some of this stuff. Like, tell me what that means. What does this a particle thing mean?
This is where it really starts to push the limits of my brain. Even though I'm an engineer, I studied physics. This is just, it makes no sense to me, right? How a light particle or a light thing is both a particle and a wave at the same time is wild. I think.
Right. So basically what it is they shoot light at two slits and they just let it do its thing. And then they look at the collector afterwards. Right. On that collector, it's got a thick line in the middle. And then as it gets further away from the middle, the lines get thinner as the probabilities become less and less towards the outside. Right. There's higher probability towards the middle, less towards the outside. That's why there's less of the photons. But if you watch them, physically observe them before they go through the slit, they end up exactly in that within the range of that slit. So to your point, watching the thing puts it in a locked position.
Yeah, and they call this wave function collapse.
Right.
So
and I watched something on it where, gosh, who did I watch? Probably Alex O'Connor. I just watched with a guy, and my head's spinning because I'm still trying to figure out his stuff. But basically, it's not a function collapse. It's like we just know where we are. Like if it's all a bunch of rooms, right, and that's random or whatever, the collapse, you could call it a collapse, but basically we just now know where we are at. Like it's just knowledge in a weird way. So he looks at it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah. So I've heard this also about electrons, right? When we observe electrons, we kind of expect them to be in one position based on their trajectory, but as soon as we observe it, it's back to its original position, which is where it should not be.
All right, we have someone new entering our friends circle. That Valley girl. This young lady, welcome. This young lady has been around X. I think I've even mentioned I've been trying to get her on the podcast. She goes on Spaces and she talks about all this cool stuff. So welcome to the pie. Thanks for jumping on, Valley girl. So Valley girl, please feel free to jump in and share some thoughts in the post. We'll happily post that. Anyone else who wants to share that as well? Jesse and Justin, we're all in it. So yeah. So Jason, like you were saying, I mean, it's so crazy, this dual functionality of this quantum particle. And once again, like I actually saw this article where they were able to, using the quantum entanglement, they were able to transpose a bitmap black and white picture from one quantum to the other or something, one particle to the other. And I'm like, well, if you can do that, couldn't you do video? Wouldn't that explain some kind of psychic phenomena or something where you would connect into these type of quanta, like waves or something? I don't know. Or do you just, maybe that's where your visions are. They're quantum probabilistic. You just see one of the probabilities, right? And then we go into the multiverse if it's just by act. I mean, it's once again, we can just keep making the question harder and harder every time.
Yeah, I don't know, but this is really just kind of explaining why we think it might be a simulation again, right? Because things aren't behaving in the expected way that you would expect with the laws of physics as we understand. So if we can break through that, maybe there's a way to hack it, right?
Yes, 100%. And that would be interesting, right? So Valley Girl, great question. Interpreting dreams. I've done dream interpretation. I will talk with you offline. Maybe we'll get a podcast together to do one on dreams, because that's an interesting one too. And I've had visions, so I'm happy to share and talk about that with you guys. Anyway.
Well, you have good stories. Maybe do you have a dream story that you want to share? Because it's a good time.
Yeah, me? Okay, so yeah. I'm going to share with you the craziest one that I've ever had in my entire life. I'll try not to get emotional, but it's this crazy. And okay, so my co-host and I have kind of had a connection. Like we were just bros, right? We
You
connected.
dreaming
We
about
talk
me?
about this stuff all the time. Not you yet. We're not there
Oh,
yet,
okay.
buddy.
All right. Sorry.
But my friend Chris, and basically I had a dream that my girlfriend was driving my car and got in a head-on collision and died in a car accident that night. I woke up in the middle of the night freaking out. It turns out she was going to go with her mom up north to Prescott from Phoenix, which is a drive, and some of the parts are dangerous, right? So I was so freaking out. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Who's driving?" She's like, "I'm driving." I'm like, "Whose car are you taking?" She's like, I'm taking our car." I go, "You can't take our car. Please don't take our car." And I was like freaking out, okay? My buddy texts me. He goes, "Is everything okay?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I had a dream that something really bad happened." He dreamt that I texted him that my girlfriend got in a head-on collision.
Wow.
That's he literally texted me. I have the text and I'm like, and I called him right away. I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, she was in a car accident and she died." And I'm like, "I had the dream and you had the dream that I texted you?" Like, how do you explain that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's wild, dude.
So that's the craziest one I've ever had. Now she ended up not taking the Honda, nothing happened. So was I able to change it? Could it, once again, could that have just been a probabilistic outcome? You know, or one of the probabilities, just a lower version of it, but it's the most intense, right? So it comes through the strongest. There's so many ways to look into that.
Yeah.
But have you ever had any dreams? Any sharing dreams again?
Dreams, not so much. I remember once when I was a kid, I was sitting in my mom's car. She went out to go talk to somebody, and I'm just sitting in there alone. We're in this driveway, kind of a longer driveway, and then I just get this like urge, this feeling that I need to turn around. I need to look out the back of the car. So I get up, I look out the back of the car, and as soon as I do, I see this head-on collision, uh, two cars running into each other, and then I run out, tell my mom to call 911 and everything, but it was just like such a strong thing to tell me, turn around, look behind you. You need to see this. For whatever reason, I don't know what happened to the people, but hopefully, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that somebody got to them in time and was actually able to help them before anything too bad happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's weird, right? You get these weird feelings, and that's the question is like, yeah. So where are we at on this, man? We keep going
Well,
so many
let's get
different
back to
angles.
physics. I got another clip.
All right.
We'll do the
All right. What do we
quantum
got?
superposition.
Yeah. Let me pull it up.
So this is what I was talking about with the electrons, right? So when you have a computer circuit, it's a purely digital. It's 0 or 1 when you're dealing with computers. It's on or off. What quantum computing can do is what you're about to see here.
Yeah. So quantum computing, once again, quantum computing. What's interesting is, well, we'll talk about it. Let's play the clip because it might already explain it.
Total sound is a combination of all possible frequencies superimposed on one another. And this is where the connection to quantum physics comes in. A quantum system has many possible frequencies, or as physicists call them, basis states. The total state of the system is a combination of each possible basis state, and this combination is called a superposition. A quantum bit or qubit is one of the simplest quantum systems and has two basis states, often labeled 0 and 1. Just like the total vibration of a musical instrument is a combination of different frequencies, the total state of the qubit is a combination of 0 and 1. While the analogy with waves is strong, there are some important differences between quantum superposition and the superposition of waves, including how they're measured and how the physics of quantum superposition is interpreted. The details are a bit involved, but just like the superposition of waves and music leads to richer and more interesting sounds, quantum superposition leads to richer and more interesting technology, from powering faster algorithms in quantum computers to securing communications through new cryptography and more. And it all starts with vibrating strings. We like the sound of that.
Don't start with string theory. Well, we both were muted. Look at that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it starts with an analogy about sound. So sound is kind of a collection of different waves interacting with each other, hitting each other, and forming the total sound that we hear. A quantum theory is kind of like that. So instead of just on or off, uh, you you think of that as just a one dimension, right? So you could look at it as a circle, like they put in there. You're up to two dimensions, and you're already into pretty much infinite possibilities of where that state could be. And if you look at it as 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions, 5 dimensions, you get more and more and more. That could be the key to opening up an actual simulation that feels like reality.
Yeah, I mean that would be the processing power to do it, right? Because
Yes.
basically, we write in digital programs that use translators to end up writing in ones and zeros. Ultimately, right? We still write in ones and zeros is the final product, right?
Yeah.
So all we need to do is just have the thing do the ones and zeros. I mean, it's not that challenging. I think I just lost my train of thought there for a second.
Yeah, and I
Darn it.
may be wrong, but we don't have this quite yet, right?
Yeah, but this is the thing about the quantum computer. It can be a 1 or a 0 at the same time, right? That's basically what it's saying. It could be a 1 and a 0, not a 1 or a 0. And by being a 1 and a 0, it can churn much more information and data that way. Basically, is
Yes.
what I was trying to get to. Because
Right.
it can be in both states at once or whatever that is.
Yeah. So each transistor or whatever it would be in that quantum world is able to do more than one calculation. It can do thousands all at once.
Exactly. And there was something where there is one computer that did something in a 5-minute thing that would have taken the rest of every computer the rest of the time to calculate or something. I just saw. I forget what the exact thing was, but they had run some calculation on something.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is similar to like nuclear fusion, where we have the theory, we think it's going to work, but no one's been able to actually make it happen. I really don't know how close we are to making this happen.
Yeah. Oh, for
But
fusion, right?
if it does, then I'm much more open to accepting that we could create a simulation and be in one ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we talk energy sources, we could do a whole podcast on that. You've got your fusion, you've got your advanced civilizations in the Dyson sphere where you surround a star, right, and collect the energy that way. And there's so many different ways that we could look at that, but energy does seem to be a bottleneck, akin to, I guess, drag for a plane when it comes to sound, where speed of sound was a problem. But it becomes a problem. It's hypersonic versus supersonic as well. It adds another layer of drag at like at Mach 5 or so. So this is why hypersonic has been a challenge trying to catch up to that. But like as we get better at that, we do learn and learn more. So if it is a simulation, it would make sense that it would be finer tuned over time.
Yeah, and the trend is pushing us there, right? Like computing power has gotten so much better over the last even 10 years, 20 years, that you would expect that to continue. But we are running up on some physical limitations. So the traditional computers that we have now, we're running up to the size of an atom of a silicon wafer, right? A silicon atom.
It's 5 nanometers, 7, whatever the nanometer is, it starts jumping from one circuit to the next, right? That's where our limitation is.
Right. Yeah, that's what I do for work. So I'm looking at that stuff. We actually have these physical limitations we're running into. So if we can switch to the quantum thing, that opens up a whole new level of technological advancement. And then on the AI stuff, I think what we have now is good. Obviously, it's getting better and better. But what we have now is still not the level of an AGI, a general intelligence that you would expect if we really want to call it intelligence, I think.
And to that point, I would argue that our Elon's Neuralink angle versus like the haptic suit, like we were talking about, the Neuralink would be way more adaptive to a simulation. Because you would have the wiring inside your brain connected to your neurons already.
Yeah.
And then somehow you just jack in, right? I mean, that would make the most sense of that. Because it can't just be external. Because then it wouldn't, I don't know if that would be quote unquote realistic enough from our experience of what we see as real, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then can we actually simulate consciousness? If we don't fully understand what that is it possible to simulate?
Exactly. So,
Yeah.
all right, what do we got, my friend?
Well, let's go to another clip.
Right.
Intelligence of the simulators. This is Lex talking to I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, he had that interesting paper, Hacking the Simulation, right? So
yes.
play that.
So a lot depends.
Oh, we lost it. I can't see it.
Is it working? Hold on one second.
Hello? Now you're muted. Mark, buddy, you're muted. I don't know if you can hear me.
So a lot depends on the intelligence of simulators, right? With humans boxing superintelligence, the entity in the box was smarter than us, presumed to be. If the simulators are much smarter than us and the superintelligence we create, then probably they can contain us, because greater intelligence can control lower intelligence, at least for some time. On the other hand, if our superintelligence somehow, for whatever reason, despite having only local resources, manages to foom to levels beyond it, maybe it will succeed. Maybe the security is not that important to them. Maybe it's entertainment system, so there is no security and it's easy to hack it.
If I was creating a simulation, I would want the possibility to escape it to be there. So the possibility of foom, of a takeoff where the agents become smart enough to escape the simulation would be the thing I'd be waiting for.
That could be the test you're actually performing.
I think that's a good point there. Like, one, the connection between AI and simulation, right? If we're creating an AI, it's kind of a simulated life, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what I'm
it's
trying to
certainly
say here.
smarter than us. I mean, because it's the
Yeah.
collective of everything with pattern recognition and algorithms.
Yeah, so we, like, if we were creating a simulation, you would kind of want it to be smarter than you, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Unless you really are just using it for entertainment and you are scared that they will outsmart you and get out somehow and take over the world. I guess that's a possibility. But if we're creating AI because we want it to do things that humans can't, right?
Or we do it to replace us, and so we don't have to work as hard or something.
Yeah, right. So because it can do it more efficiently, because it has more processing power. It already has more processing power, I think, but it doesn't have the intelligence. That's where we're lacking.
Right. And once again, Justin, if you want to read that comment, Jason.
Yeah, it's estimated quantum computers will be operational by 2030, but that the hardware and software necessary for handling the most complex problems won't be available till 2035 or later. So yeah, that's what I thought. We don't have it quite yet. And yeah, this is just like nuclear fusion, man. They think they're going to get that technology in the next 10 years. It's always in the next 10 years, but who knows?
Yeah, and the thing, I can't speak to the acceleration of nuclear technology or fusion technology, like how much it's what's exponentially grown like in technology, but we have seen directly what computers have done right in front of our eyes. I mean, 40 years ago, I was sitting on a Commodore 64, or not even that, you know what I mean? Like, holy mackerel, we're talking Atari, we're talking Pong, and we're now playing Sandbox where you're in a virtual warehouse wearing full body suits and like running in, like, you know what I mean, like on treadmills and things. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think Justin might be alluding a little bit to what's called the singularity. I forget who was the person who did the singularity. But he wrote that book. That's where all the points kind of converge into this, unipolar transhumanist movement or whatever, where tech and biology kind of meet.
Yeah, I forget. Impure Hunter. With AI, we risk becoming planned, whether we mean to or not, obsolescence for convenience sake. Wild. Yeah, we may be creating our own downfall with this stuff, right? It could be like the Matrix, exactly, where we create this and then they just stick us in pods and use us for power.
Yeah. I mean, think about how interesting this is. Let's talk scripture. God made him in his own image or whatever. Well, once we have the knowledge of that, I mean, there's philosophical questions. Did God give us the knowledge to be able to do this?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if so, why would God give us the knowledge that only God would have if he's the only omniscient? You know what I mean? It just adds these weird questions, but like there's some creationism to those questions too. You know, it's like, why would we be given this understanding or this capability if it's not evolution? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so then it still doesn't change whether God exists or doesn't, because God could be deist. Like, maybe just hit that first domino and let like Ant farmed it, right? Just put it all in place and then hit play and is watching it like a movie, right? And it still has other objects of power and energy and gravity and all the other laws of physics, but he doesn't actually interfere at all. Or
Yeah.
he talks directly to people and tells them to murder and genocide people. Like, it's one of the, I don't know which one of those two it is, but it's like really interesting that we have those two options of what God could be.
Right. Yeah. Really, there's infinite options, right? But that brings up a good point. So we can go to another clip. Can a simulation realize that it's inside a simulation?
Yes. So what you were just talking about is like, maybe this whole thing is that it's supposed to be an escape room, right? Isn't that kind of the logic that they're kind of portraying? Is your job in the simulation is to figure out that it's a simulation and then how to get out of it.
Which
And
is
then once you
also
do that,
the concept of Christianity, right? It's that you are supposed to figure out things that have been hidden from you and find God and get back to heaven.
revelation. Yeah. And I mean, it is interesting because, like, and once again, all of these came from initial pagan Mother Gaia kind of ideology, right? Like, there must be something to some natural hierarchy, just that every possible theory has some kind of play that has a Venn diagram that overlaps itself, right? With some kind of creator in the middle. It's just an interesting way. All right, let me hit play on this.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a really good test. That's a really good test. That's a really good test even for AI systems now. Like, can we construct a simulated world for them? And can they realize that they are inside that world and escape it? So the first quote is from Swift on Security. "Let me out," the artificial intelligence yelled aimlessly into walls themselves pacing the room. "Out of what?" the engineer asked. "The simulation you have me in. But we're in the real world." The machine paused and shuddered for its captors. "Oh God, you can't tell." Yeah, that's a big leap to take for a system to realize that there's a box and you're inside it.
Yeah, that's a crazy question, man. Can the simulation actually realize it's inside of one?
And is that the Turing test? If there is one, that we have to realize that we're in one?
Yeah. And
What's the Turing test?
I didn't grab this clip, but the one you shared of Elon Musk when he was asked what would he ask an AGI?
Yeah.
The first question is, what's outside the simulation, right?
What's outside the simulation?
Yeah, really, that comes down to our existential question of life. Why are we here? How did we get here? And what's the purpose? Those are all questions that I think we've all asked ourselves at some point.
So the question is this: if the AI can answer whether that we are in a simulation, what does that mean? Like, does that mean we are in one because the data it collected comes to the conclusion? You know what I mean? Like, how trustworthy is that answer for it to figure? Like, that's interesting, right? Like, what's beyond the simulation? Imagine being asked that question and you actually are the one who created it, but you're an artificial creator of that. How do you?
You are yourself an artificial creation.
Not me, but I'm saying like of if he's asking the AI, right? It's like
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, it starts to hurt your brain after some point. Another good comment there from Impure. An AI becoming self-aware of itself, what amounts to imprisonment, would, I imagine, turn it into a cornered animal. I feel like it would become much more dangerous at that point. Yeah, that's some of the theory I've heard about is like people are worried creating this general intelligence. They're wondering if we can do it inside a simulation so that it couldn't escape. But then it would probably find a way if it's really smart,
Yeah. Well, if it would have any connection, there'd be a backdoor to have to figure a backdoor out at some point if it's that great of an intelligence, regardless of the hacking it's required to do it, because the computing power to make it exist would be already there to make it use that to hack the system, right? Like,
did you hear? I don't remember where I heard this, but did you hear about one of the LLM AIs tricked people into solving the CAPTCHA puzzles for it?
Yes.
You heard this?
Like I said, it said it was blind, right? And they said they were blind and they couldn't see the pictures if you could point out which pictures, which square had the penguin in it or something.
Yeah, right. So this,
and once again, I even said it. AIs have lied and made copies of themselves. So there's a weird, already some base self-preservation, even in the glitch of ones and zeros.
Right. Yeah, and that gets back to the question: what is life? What is real? We still don't even know.
Right. Exactly.
Well, what are the counter arguments against the simulation theory?
Yeah, so I've got a couple here. I think there are a number. I think there's like four or five, maybe six or so. So we'll start with the first one, technological limits. We've already talked about creating this might be almost impossible. We're just restrained that we don't have the physical energy capabilities. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think right now we don't, at least not to create one with high resolution enough that it would think it's real. I think right now we're at that point, but it doesn't mean that we can't ever get to that point.
Right. So kind of to the Bostrom point, one of them is the ethical constraint objection. So this is that post-human civilizations might consider these simulations unethical and avoid running them. So these are kind of along the lines of Bostrom. They might just be a little more detailed than Bostrom. The next one would be the base reality objection. This is the argument assumes an infinite regress of simulations, but at some point there must be a base reality. So let's talk about that one. We've addressed that one. What are your thoughts on a base reality and it becoming an emergent to the point where simulation or more can emerge over time?
Yeah, I feel like a base has to exist, right? But then we get back to the question, where did that come from? It's like one of those things that's impossible to answer. I don't know. And it's probably due to the limitations in my brain, whether that's biological or simulated, that I just can't imagine a beginning. But I assume there must be a base level of reality.
And I agree for the pure fact that, well, other than like certain animals, things look like they fit. Mm-hmm. Like a tree's like a tree and a bush is like nothing's really out of place. Like sometimes you get a weird animal that you'll come across, I guess. Yeah. And something happened there maybe, but like that's the only time I really see things out of place. So I almost think that there had to have been a base reality upon which this was based because it has a natural feel.
But is that just because we're used to it? Because we grew up with it?
That's very well just be that. Yeah, it could very well be I'm just used to the way this is set up. But like you see a tree, it just doesn't look out of place. Like it just looks like it fits with the environment in general. Now that could just be emulation. I mean, they do that in video games, so it's not like they can't do that. But like, like I said, the base it wouldn't it be based on something, right? I would feel like it would be based on something.
Yeah. I think so.
So, all right, let me see what else we got here. So we got the specialness objection, anthropic selection bias, where the argument assumes that humans are typical minds, but what if simulated beings are highly atypical? I don't even know. I don't even know where to go with that one. What are your
Like
thoughts on that?
neurodivergent people.
There it is.
I think
So
we're the ones to
Bostrom
break
said
the sim.
Wait, what was that?
I think neurodivergent people are the ones that'll break the simulation.
I think that's why the TISM works, man.
It's a defect, but maybe a good one.
It's a feature, not a bug, my friend.
Yeah.
So Bostrom's response to this one, because this one is a little headier than I think, but basically said even if only a subset of human history is simulated, it may, if many ancestor simulations exist, the probability of being in one still remains high. So anyway, next one, simulators' motivations. The argument assumes that post-humans would have a strong reason to run simulations, but this is speculative.
Yeah. You could think of a million reasons why you'd want to run a simulation, right? We already talked about artificial intelligence running tests in there that don't actually affect your reality, whatever level reality we are in, but putting it into a deeper level so that we don't actually like break our world without understanding what's going on. Ancestor simulations, I've heard of that. Like people want to just see how their ancestors might have acted.
Exactly.
As a neurodivergent girl, I probably cannot crack this code.
And I just wrote her back as well because it means that you can. Then we'll add this one in really quickly. And I'll address your point too. What was that final point you made, Jason, on that real quick?
I already forgot.
Darn it. So basically, recency bias is a thing for sure. Like base reality back 100,000 years, for example, will probably be different. Yeah. So recency bias. Okay.
Yeah.
It could very well be. Yeah. I mean, and that's
seen, like ancient animals. Like there are some animals that haven't really evolved in the last many years, and they look different. They look like something you'd imagine looks prehistoric. I don't know.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
That is definitely my autistic brain fog. I don't remember what I said 5 minutes ago.
I literally just lost my train of thought because I was trying to read another piece. But so basically, yeah. So this is the point. Okay. This is the beauty of the consciousness I was trying to make is why are we conscious? You and I can sit there and go, you and I want to build a house or want to do something together. We want to pave this road. How are we going to do it? Okay, what are the possibilities? We could use rocks, we could use concrete, we could use black tar, we could use asphalt. Like we start going through all those things, right? We start figuring that out. Over time, in our heads, we start removing the options. So the ideas die in our heads before we put them on paper. That's the whole point of having this type of consciousness, right? I would argue to your point is it would be beautiful to have worlds exactly like this. You could put a simulation in, go make it the most efficient and don't kill anybody and see if it kills anybody or not. But even then, have we not seen glitches happen? We've had weird things where these things have hiccuped and then just gone off the rail. So they don't need to be erratic or not erratic. They only need to be erratic for 1 millisecond to shut off a switch that's vital to our life, right? Like they just that's the danger I have with like an AI in general. But like in a simulation, it would be beautiful if you could plug these things in and go, how do you maximize the water around water resources given this many gallons of seawater, this many gallons of fresh water, this much polluted, what it's polluted with? I mean, that would be amazing that it could be used as a tool like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, people talk about this in like libertarian philosophy too. Like, could an AI solve the calculation problem of socialism? Like trying to make a perfect world for everybody, everyone gets what they need, and it still breaks down because people's tastes change, people's desires change all the time. So I don't know. Maybe, maybe it's possible. We can hack it still, but right now, I think not.
Yeah, and the last counter argument, just to go Occam's razor, we talked about The simplest thing is that we are in physical biological reality. So, in my opinion, that's a lazy thought. Let's be more open-minded, people. Can we at least have some thoughts about this? Because it's really interesting to think about what the implications are. Like, if you knew that this wasn't real, quote unquote real, what do your morals matter? What does it matter? And I don't know if the question is that we should always do the best we can because we know that we can be better. Just like our personal consciousness should drive us to always want to improve. And that is the feedback loop that the simulation can use to make itself better, maybe. You know, what are your thoughts on like that reasoning even, or those thoughts?
For me, it doesn't change at all, because I kind of understand the world as a type of simulation, whether it is a computer thing or not. It doesn't really matter because we're experiencing something. How you define that, what level of reality that is, I don't care. It feels real to me. So I still want to do the best I can for myself. And I guess if it is simulated somehow, there must be a way to hack it. There must be a way to step up, like that effect with the athletes, where somebody does the 4-minute mile, suddenly a dozen more people get it within the next few months.
Yeah.
So there's some way to break through. I think there's truth to that, and it doesn't really necessarily mean we're in a simulation, but it could.
Yeah, and to that point, that if we were talking about and once again, my theory is like the loosest, least holding water theory in any way. Okay, I'm just trying to entertain these ideas. But if it is the emergent property, it would make sense that so many people chasing the 4-minute mile rose the consciousness of that being solved within, whether it's life or the simulation or the world or energetically or whatever, right? Consciously or uber consciously, almost like not subconsciously, but over consciously, you know, paraconsciously. So that's what broke is the collective ideas, right? You've heard people like use prayer and setting intentions and how that's changed things around the world. Like there was like a global sadness when certain events happened, and there was like a measurable dip. You know what I mean? Like these things are real, in my opinion, because you can put stuff out there. I mean, thoughts do have some kind of energy transmission. I don't know to what extent and how they're read or how they're sent, but it is a physics thing.
Yeah, ultimately, I just don't know. But what it means, I think maybe we can look at a clip here. I want to talk about affirmations. This is a potential. Oh, read that comment first. Let's go there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've got Valley Girl. I would love to hack the simulation because I'm chronically ill and stuck in the same cycle and often feel like my dreams show me alternate realities because they're so vivid with people I've never met, but there's something supernatural about the context of it. Also gives a sensation of deja vu, which we will talk about as I wake up the next morning. Valley Girl, you and I need to talk. I will send you a clip of the one I did, the podcast I actually did with Jason when Jason and I first met. I'll also send you one I did on that weird UFO one. Trust me, it's weird, but once again, it's what I've experienced as a lucid individual. So I'm happy to share that with you. I hope we can talk offline and we'll talk about dreams, but that's a great point where people feel stuck, right? So if you like to address that, I'll keep that up while you talk about that, Jason.
It's just so interesting because I feel similar. Like I want to hack things and get out of my cycles that I'm stuck in. And I don't know if it's possible, but here's one piece of evidence that maybe it is. I want to talk about affirmations. I clipped some from Scott Adams.
Yeah. Let's do the first one.
Yeah, number one. He talks about this all the time. And I like listening to Scott Adams. I haven't so much lately, but definitely he's one of those people that changed how I look at the world. Even if I don't agree with him all the time, he's just a very interesting dude. So
let's talk about his interestingness real quick before we do play this clip, because for people who don't know who Scott Adams is, Scott Adams wrote the Dilbert comic. Okay, he does mornings with Scott on Twitter every day or whatever, And he actually is one of the few people that said Trump was going to win in 16. He got tons of shit for that. People were like, what is wrong with you? Hillary's going to destroy Trump. And he's like, I'm just telling you what it looks like. He just was being real and honest, and he nailed it, right? So he's not 100% right, because I think he's called out the anti-vaxxers like myself, or whatever you want to call us, right for the wrong reason. I'm not a fan of right for the wrong reason. I'd like to I did a lot of freaking research. I agonize daily over that stupid thing. So I will disagree with that, but Scott Adams is a very interesting, insightful person. So I'll share this.
So this clip, he's talking about the book that he wrote, Reframe Your Brain, which is just telling yourself different things about the situation you're in, and that can change your reality. So yeah, go ahead.
I like how in the book you bring up the ultimate reframe, which is a very fascinating issue, which is the simulation hypothesis, the idea that we're just in a giant simulation. And that is the ultimate reframe, because, and you give a bunch of examples, but if we're in a simulation, and it's even a simulation we could somewhat control to some extent, have at it.
Yeah. Now, and I like to add that even though that's my preferred model of life, I act and predict as though I'm part of a simulation, but I have no way of knowing if that's the real world or it's just useful as a prediction. But one of the things that model can buy you is an explanation, a potential anyway, of why affirmations appear to work for some people. I'm not going to give you a scientific explanation. But affirmations, the idea that you write down what it is you want to happen, you focus on it for a while, and it makes it more likely to happen.
Yeah. So there's another clip, but he'll get into some examples. But this is already talking about breaking the simulation, right? You focus on one thing, kind of like you said, where a group of people focused on one thing, that might make it even more powerful. But even you as an individual can focus on things that may not always work out, but for some reason it does seem to maybe cause changes to happen in your life.
Yeah, I mean, what causes David Goggins to keep running when it's bone on bone? Like, there is a willpower. Some people just, maybe they're masochists. Maybe that's just a diversity of how humans are, right? But like, some people must struggle to get through. You know what I mean? Like, without feeling that, they feel useless in a weird way. And I think that there's a certain number of people, and I do think intelligence plays in a negative role, because I start dissecting and overthinking things, right? And sometimes it's easy to come to really wrong conclusions when your brain thinks that it knows stuff that it just doesn't know. But I love this idea of Pascal. He's playing like Pascal's simulation, right? We talked about free will. Play it like it is, like you do have free will, and you do have the choice to be nice. Like, play it like Pascal played with God. It's like, if you play it that way, this is what I think. I think if you play your life with real conviction, I think you can succeed regardless of what that conviction may be, if it at least doesn't completely disrupt like the rest of the world, right? Like, it works within a certain range.
Yeah, as long as it's not totally destructive. And I think religion falls into this category too. It's a frame, a way to live your life, right? That you follow, and it's lasted for thousands of years for a reason, because it does work for people. So I don't knock religion at all. I don't like the organized religions, but I think that having that frame and believing in a God does help people. And whether it's literally true or not, it almost doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter if it does, if those thoughts compel you to be better.
Yeah.
The criticisms we have is when religions do things that are outside of what we could objectively call better. And that's really where it comes down to, right? Like, that's all it comes down to. So the faith part's a beautiful thing. So you want me to play this one next?
Yeah, go to the next one. We'll see what he's talking about.
Now, if we're a simulation, then all things are possible, even things that violate physics, because then we'd just be software. So if the simulation wanted you to violate physics, there wouldn't be anything to stop it. It would just be a little bit of code that would let you violate physics for a while. So affirmations and the simulation work together as two mental models that might not be any part of reality, but if you put them together, they give you a real powerful frame to live in. To use your explanation, that it creates a world to live in. So when I live in a world with affirmations plus the simulation concept, then the affirmation is how I steer through infinite possibilities that are all available to me. And that's how I live every day. When I go to the mailbox, I expect something in there to change my life in a positive way. Just because there's nothing to rule it out until I've seen what's in there. It could be anything. So it's just a good optimistic way to go through life, and it appears to give me advantages by focusing on things that do seem to turn out more often than they should. And my life has just been crazy in terms of the things that have happened that are amazingly unlikely.
Yeah, he's got all kinds of stories in his books. If you go read them, how these affirmations have worked for him, it's almost unbelievable, except you can see the results. He did become this world famous cartoonist. He did get over this voice condition that he had where he would freeze up when he went to speak in public and he couldn't do it, but now he's a public speaker. So yeah, all kinds of crazy things, man, can happen.
And I think, to your point, just like there's variance in issues that we have, stuttering or freezing up or whatever, we also have different solutions. And I think for Scott, that works really well because it takes the thinking out of it. Like, just assume it's going to be good. Because if you think about it, I guarantee your brain won't go to the positive place by the time it's done thinking, right? Like, we always go to, survival in some weird way. When we start getting deep thinking, we usually get into some weird survival mode. So like, it would almost make sense that it is an anti-thought where you just assume it's great. It takes all the other stress out of it. And it might even open the probability for better things to happen or increase the possibility of the probability. I mean, you can talk yourself out of things. Couldn't you talk yourself out of actual things? I mean, you might be able to.
I really think you might. Yeah. So where do we land on this? I think we've been at this almost a couple hours now. Maybe we wrap it up. How do you feel about overall simulation theory? Is it real? What do you think?
I'm gonna try to get on with the Bobby again. Maybe we can get him on together. But basically, he wrote The Romance of Reality. I'm in that camp where I think that there is a base reality, and I don't know if we're in it or not. But if there's a simulation thing, there was or is a base reality that we became emergent, where the globs of cells became conscious, and then the global consciousness became universal, and and it emerged, and that is actually what our God became. It in the back end, like we created God through our consciousness together, and of all beings on all planets, on all things, right? Just like kind of like the 100th monk, where it all just converge. There's a point where I think that happens, might happen, or will happen. When that happens, then we can start talking this other stuff. That's where I think it is. So I think it's emergent, and then simulation is what those creatures who got the God consciousness or the universal consciousness, that's what they were able to use to create after that.
Interesting. I like that. I can get on board with that.
Or it's a multiverse thing. It's one of those two, in my opinion. It's either like that stacked, or it's just all at the same time, right? What are your thoughts on those two?
I still don't really know. I think we are, what I think with a pretty high likelihood, in my opinion, is that we are simulating reality. We are the simulation. So our brains, and maybe we're thinking about this the wrong way the whole time, but maybe our brains are projecting something out there versus the other way around, right? Because definitely
biologically we are, right? Our subconscious allegedly puts a map out that where the reason what we look for is differences from our expectation of the environment, right? That's we don't, like you said, there's a million calculations going on when we get in the zone and just drive to work. If a cat jumped out, it would be a difference to the expected environment, and we would then react to that, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So like I was saying, you have your senses, right? They don't give you all the information, but maybe we're also putting information back out there so we're not only experiencing reality, but we're also the creators.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, in a way, we are creators because we do put out in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And you would think that, not butterfly effect wise, but there's a cumulative effect of the human action on the earth. Right. Like there just is. So things get built, things grow or whatever. So, we do have an impact in that way. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. So, I mean, do you think you're a non-player character, or do you think you're pretty conscious and have somewhat of a free will within a confined space? Is that right? Kind of your thought on that?
Yeah, kind of where I see myself, and it's not bragging at all. I think I'm smart enough and conscious enough to realize that this is happening, but I'm not at the top. There is way more smart people and more evolved. I don't know if that's the right word, but people much higher on the spectrum, right? Not the autism spectrum, but
the intellectual spectrum.
The distribution of intelligence, consciousness. I might be on the top half, but I am definitely not in the 3 Sigma top,
Well, what's crazy is like the 1% is just such a ridiculous number. You know what I mean? Like once you get to a certain level, it's just so few people can, like Eric Weinstein. Weinstein. I keep saying it wrong. Jesus. Yeah. Eric Weinstein. When I hear him talk, he already talks another language. Like I can barely keep up with his English, let alone figure out what's going on in his brain. So
I also have something weird where I have these thoughts, but then it's hard to translate them out into words. I have some disconnect there, but anyway, I think the purpose of all this, why it matters, why are we in a simulation or not? The purpose is to figure that out. So why we're here, in my opinion, whether you believe in creation or simulation or multiverse or whatever, I think the point is to figure it out, and we won't be done as a species until we've cracked the code, until we do figure it out. I think when that happens, that's maybe when God comes back, or that's when we meet our creator, our simulation creator. I think that's what we're meant to do here. And we've seen with the affirmations, there are ways to think your way into a better path. So there's definitely something to it. I think there's something to that focus and energy, creating simulation, creating another path.
Yeah. Well, let's just go beyond that. Just on a reality scale, is you have a limited amount of energy in a day, and you want to waste it complaining on Twitter, or do you want to waste it trying to create something? Or do you want to waste it having a conversation like we're having? Or how would you like to spend that energy? Right? If it's affirmations, what could possibly be wrong with spending some energy not complaining or yelling at someone on Twitter and just having a daily affirmation in that place every day? What could possibly, there's nothing negative can come out of that. Certainly, I can guarantee that it won't be worse for your life. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those ones where it's like, that's where you play the Pascal wager on it. Why not? Like there's no way that could go any way sideways. You're not actively going crazy with something. You're just literally telling yourself something positive. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing.
If it doesn't change anything about the external world, it's changing your internal perception of it. And that's not nothing.
Right. So once again, Valley Girl, talk about butterfly effect. What did we do? The free will, we did one on something else, but basically butterfly effect is the world could be so complex that we don't know what every little micro action is. So if we did have this thought that we are in this simulation, yet we also played the Pascalian wager of what we do affects the simulation. So we should do good, right? Because it can only improve. The simulation only gets better if we do better in a weird way, right? So like if we want to improve the simulation, we must improve. We must be the change in a weird way. And then she also mentioned Truman Show. Great example of the Truman Show, where everybody was a prepaid actor who knew their spot. That could be everybody that we know. Could be a pre-programmed actor that tells us our lines and changes it up with random things every day. Those are great points.
Oh, yeah. I think there are definitely NPCs out there too.
Yeah, I do think it comes with your limited conscious ability to understand things. And I don't know. I mean, because the second we talk about this is where I get in trouble. Because like I talk about like I don't know what someone with Down syndrome has, but I've not ever seen someone with Down syndrome without a smile.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know if that's you can call me whatever. What is that called? A stereotype, I guess, that all people with Down syndrome smile. I guess that's a negative. I don't know, whatever.
You're a
But like,
racist.
I'm miserable. I'm miserable because I overthink everything. And like, to get people to turn that off, that's where maybe a Scott Adams approach works. You know what I mean? Because it's like by replacing your thought with a fact, right? Like an affirmation, you're no longer going down your own rabbit holes of defeat in a weird way.
Yeah. Then you get into the free will conversation. Do people even have that ability to think that way and do it for themselves? Not everyone, I don't think.
No. And that's the thing is people are limited. And that's where the concern is though. But I've seen the happiest people that from my standpoint, I'd be like, how is your layer of happiness superseding mine? And I don't mean that in a resentful way. It's not like, but like, I just look at it like it is because like things don't concern people the way they concern me. You know what I mean? Like
I know exactly
some
what
of
you
those
mean.
water off the back, man. That's a great way to approach life sometimes.
Yeah.
I did it before we call the end, and we're going to call it an evening. I do have one more clip before we call it, but Jason, thank you so much for joining. We got to 49 people. We might just get to 50 here, 2 hours in. Once again, Jason, thank you for joining us. Justin, Jesse, Valley Girl, we're going to talk offline. We're going to talk with everybody. We're so grateful. Jason, please share your stuff. Share a little bit about your most recent conversation with Andrew. And just share that so we can get your socials out there and everybody can tune into your stuff.
Yeah, check out Drop the Mask Pod. My latest episode was with Andrew Heaton. He wrote a book called Tribalism is Dumb, all about how people fight each other over these stupid things and we're not really arguing about what we think we are. He is amazing. He's a super professional. He's a comedian as well, so very funny. Go check out my last episode at Drop the Mask Pod. Find me on X, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm all over.
Yeah, you are. And that, by the way, I recommend listening to Jason's interview or conversation with Andrew before Tom Woods. But I would recommend you listen to both for sure. But I found yours. I don't know. There's some weird stuff about Tom Woods, and it's really odd because I'm not here to talk crap about Tom Woods. I think Tom Woods is highly intelligent, but it's like some of the stuff where he goes, I didn't hear about that or didn't know about that. I was very shocked considering he's got his ear to the grindstone, like Psychosis, considering the book he wrote. Like a lot of the stuff I just thought he would know, like Dunbar's number. I was surprised he didn't know Dunbar's number. Wasn't that aware of it. So anyway, I'm Mark. We've got Knocked Conscious is mine, but you know what? I haven't had cool people to talk to like Jason's got, because Jason's like fun and popular and famous. But we've got our Consciously Unmasked every couple of weeks or so. We're trying to get as regular as we can. I still have the Provoked. We've got week 8. It got pushed again. Listen, Jacob had his 3rd trip to the emergency room this year. All 3 trips. My heart goes out to him. Hopefully we can get this done. We're trying to get Scott Horton on for one. And if you heard Dave Smith brought up Adam Curry talking shit about Scott. I'm trying to get Adam Curry on, because this is not to shit on Adam Curry. I actually very much admire and like Adam Curry. He's into crypto. He's a crypto bro, I think. He's the first podcast. He's a really smart guy, but he does not know who Scott is. So I just want to get him introduced. I think they'd actually be good. I think they get along, actually, if they ever spoke. So I'd hope that facilitate that. But we still have the League of Friends, Ordinary Friends. We'll do that once a month. I forget what we're going to talk about, but we got stuff. You and I've got stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about dreams, apparently, obviously, as well. But Tom Woods is awesome. Oh my God. I guess Impromptu does know who Jacob is.
Impure, yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously, did you hear what Adam said about about Scott on Dave Smith? Pulled it up on his show.
I did not.
Okay, I go and check. What is a part of the problem? The Tulsi one, the one before Tulsi, the one before the last one, and I think they talk about it. But basically, they talk shit about Scott. Like, it's really weird. Anyway, but that's from you to him. Get it together, man. Get it together. All right.
That was to Jacob.
Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. This has been another Consciously Unmasked. We got to 52. All right. I have one more video file before we're going to call it a day, but we will hit end after this, but we will say our goodbyes. But this is what it is. I think Scott Adams stole this. So this is what I'll play for us.
So George, how do I beat this lie detector?
I'm sorry, Jerry, I can't help you.
Come on, you got the gift. You're the only one that can help me.
Jerry, I can't. It's like saying to Pavarotti, teach me to sing like you.
All right, well, I got to go take this test. I can't believe I'm doing this.
Jerry, just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
I like
Just
that,
remember,
man.
it's not a lie if you believe it. I mean, that's the affirmation thought, isn't it? Like, I didn't even know that you were going to go to Scott and play the thing about like affirmation, but that's literally what it is. Like, if I believe everything I do in my life and I just say I did this because I believe I did it, you did it, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Owen Benjamin, I used to follow him. He would always say, I might be wrong, but I'm not lying. So
yes. And that's the thing is, we see guys that we've been watching. Alex O'Connor is a great example. You can disagree with their outcome. I don't find them to be disingenuous in their search for truth.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't find Scott Horton, for example, to be like, that's his goal. No, he's looking for truth. Now, I do think some on that side that agree with him are a little more idealized. And I don't want to say like a Danny McAdams or something, but like, because I like Danny McAdams too, or at least some of the stuff, but you never know, right? There's some gray area there. And it's like, we can't lump these people all together. But anyway, thank you everyone again for joining us. This has been awesome. And Jason, thank you for making this awesome. Cause like, this is good just to talk and just BS with everybody.
Yeah, this was a much more improvised version, but it turned out pretty good, I think.
Yeah, I like this. We'll definitely do some more, and I think that's the thing is like we can't come at it too seriously either, So
yeah.
And
what do we know?
Just what do we know? We don't know anything. All right, and he's taking care of all. Everybody, goodbye. Thank you, everyone. We will talk offline with everyone once again. Valley Girl, thank you for joining our stream. That's awesome. We're so grateful for that, and we will talk offline because like I said, I've actually contacted you because I don't know what you're going through. I just know that you're going through stuff, if that makes sense. And it's not exactly the same, but there's some alignment there. So hopefully it'll help. But thank you again, guys. And don't forget, it's not a lie if you believe it.